Coral Talks. It's your host, Caroline. Happy November. Hi, guys. Future me. I'm just here to say I'm sorry. This episode's very, very late. I filmed this pretty last minute, and I did not get to editing it now, which is like Monday night. So I am aware I'm like a day late. But don't worry, nothing's happened to me. I've just been busy. But here it is. I hope you enjoy. Okay, bye. Guys, okay, so I have a special guest today, my emotional support teddy bear. His name is Ted. Say hi. Hi. So we have a lot to talk about together today, me and Ted. Let's get started. I got a killer joke today. You ready? How did the hammerhead shark do on the environmental science test? He nailed it! Okay, today I got 2 featured species because I realized that my episodes kept on getting shorter each time, and I could not figure out what the reason was. And I was just like, hey, you know what? Let's just do 2 featured species because there's too much animals to feature anyway. So, okay, they're both of these species are spooky. Someone's trying to reminisce Halloween right now. Everyone's moving on to Christmas already, like it's November 3rd. It's only 3 days after Halloween, guys. Before I talk about these 2 featured species, though, I must go off track for a bit to talk about Halloween. Halloween is one of my favorite holidays, and so me and my friends, a few people at school, went to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal last week, and it was an experience for sure. It was my first time going, and honestly, I was so grateful I went with a group of friends, and I always got to walk hand in hand between them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to handle the people that came and scared us left, right, behind, and front. I only had to worry about behind and front, no sides, because I was surrounded, thankfully. So we went on the Terror Tram, the Quiet Place, and the Weekend Haunted Houses. I definitely think I used up my share of scares, maybe a year already. They had us, for the Terror Tram, they had us get off, and we started walking through different sections and meeting the lovely murderers, the haunters from just different Blumhouse horror movies, and they try to chase us and, of course, interact with us. Oh my goodness, I did not want to play with Megan Robot and her big girl toys. Or tools, not toys. They're not very safe to be toys. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. But it was so fun. If you have not been able to go to Halloween Horror Nights, definitely try going. I think it's definitely worth it. Definitely scary, but it was worth the scare. I liked it. On Halloween night, I saw a house with this cute skeleton family sitting in their yard, drinking something from their empty cups, and a small skeleton kid walking their dog, which was pretty wholesome, pretty cute, made me laugh. Yeah, it was fun. I loved Halloween. I always love Halloween every year, even though I don't really trick or treat. Yeah. So back to the featured species. The first one is the viperfish. There are about 9 species that fit underneath the name viperfish, and there is a specific scientific name. I just don't want to pronounce it. It's pretty long. Um, it's hard to pronounce too. I should be pronouncing it, but I'm just not going to pronounce it today. Um, you could look it up and pronounce it yourself. Maybe that's something you want to do. But yeah, they look like a snake hybrid to me, with an agitated fish combined in one. Their jaws and mouth stick out, extending past its eyes. Their bodies are long, cylinder-ish, and it goes around 12 inches long. They have very spiky teeth that look like long, skinny fangs, and they use it to trap their victims, make them struggle, make those bite marks hurt a lot. Viperfish are found in the mesopelagic zone, which is starting about 650 feet to 9,000 feet. It's considered the twilight zone, this mesopelagic zone, because sometimes towards the top there's still sunlight a little bit, and that's why it's called the twilight zone. The viperfish are found usually in tropical warmer waters, so I think Australia and other places with warmer waters. Yeah. They look pretty scary, but they're really cool. They just give off, back off, stay away, I can hurt you vibes. Um, they, but what's really cool about them is that they have strips of photofurs, which are specific organs that produce light from a chemical reaction, and that photofur in the viperfish goes down along their entire 12 inches of body like a line, and it creates a bioluminescent light that flickers, and this attracts other fish, which are their prey. And once the prey gets attracted, the viperfish are able to bite, attack, and get their food. Alright, the second one for my featured species is the barreleye, which is also known as the spookfish. Barreleyes can refer to any fish that have barrel-shaped heads and tubular eyes. There's about 20 species within this category of species of fish, barreleye fish, and there is also a scientific name, but I guess I'm just not feeling with the scientific names. I'm not going to pronounce it. It's pretty long. It starts with an O. You can Google it if you want and pronounce it yourself. These fish are usually dark gray or black. They're on the smaller side, around 6 inches long. Oh, I forgot to mention, the viperfish, there are different appearances. Some of them are clear, some of them are red, orange-ish, some of them are pinkish. Just imagine the fish that you would find in the deep sea. Back to the barreleye fish. They are dark gray, around black, and they're usually 6 inches long, so they're smaller than viperfish. They are also found in the mesopelagic zone, around 1,800 to 2,500 feet. It lives around the Pacific waters between Japan, Baja California, and Alaska. What's special about them is that they have upward pointing, bright green pigmented, luminescent, tube-shaped eyes that can rotate and see straight up through its transparent forehead. That's crazy. That was a lot to take in. But it's used to spot prey, so it could be discreet, so like a horizontal fish, just swimming about, but here's a fish that swims horizontal and can rotate its eyes to look upward to find its prey. Special. Very, very mysterious and cool. And what's even spookier about this barreleye is that they have transparent foreheads, like I was mentioning earlier. Their forehead is a clear membrane that is filled with fluid and acts like a shield. They have large, flat fins that can help it stay completely still in the water as a part of their discreetness to spot and catch prey. This fish, all in all, just gives off very, very mysterious. It wants to be kind of quirky, and it acts very discreet. hasn't been really easy for scientists, anybody really, to spot one. They're not considered rare as a population, but they're considered rare for a sighting, I would say. Okay, those are my featured species this week. I hope you are able to picture them. If not, please Google them. They're pretty cool to see. I don't know how I can attach a picture on here, but it doesn't show on Spotify. You have to go, it only shows on YouTube, and sometimes the image blanks out, which is not very fun for both me to figure out and you guys. So maybe showing pictures is a later on thing. But I really would like you guys to look at these animals because they're extremely cool. So if you could Google them, definitely do. Moving on to the second section. Today we're going to learn about marshes and bogs and swamps. When I say we're going to learn, I mean we, because don't worry, if you don't know what marshes, bogs, and swamps are, I don't either. I am learning now as I speak too. Well, as I was typing my little script for this, I was learning. Now I'm just saying, but today I am featuring this question, and it's from Lisa. Marshes, bogs, and swamps, they're all part of the wetland biome. It is land that is covered by water, and that water can be salty, fresh, or varies depending on different seasons. Marshes and swamps can be found in warm, wetter climates like Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, or Florida's Everglades, and bogs are found more in cooler, more milder, higher altitude places like Switzerland, United Kingdom, and Europe. In the U.S., states like Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, and definitely a few more that I am just not going to name, that might have left out, they all hold wetland habitats. So a lot of places you can find wetland habitats. Let me break each of them down. Let me break the marshes, bogs, and swamps down. First, what is a marsh? Well, they form near ponds and lakes, and like I was saying earlier, they're a type of wetland. They are an area of land where the water covers the ground, and grasses, soft-stemmed plants, and reeds grow there. Reeds are long, thin grass that can grow about 15 feet or taller, with soft, blady leaves. If you've ever been to like Yosemite National Park, on the fields, if you can see the tall grass that flows with the wind, those are reeds. So that basically describes what a marsh is. Of course, the plants and the water that covers the area of land is what makes a marsh, but of course, there are other animals and plants and visiting animals that make it the entire habitat that it is. But I'll talk about that later. I'm going to continue on to swamps. Swamps are similar to marshes in a sense, but they have more trees and woody, stemmy shrubs type of vibe. They usually have a larger proportion of water and are deeper compared to marshes. Moving on to a bog. What is a bog? They start off as shallow ponds, and they fill up with rotting leaves, plants, which then turns into a moss growth. And then other plants start growing at the surface of this body of water and moss, and that eventually forms this thick mat of moss and half decaying plants. This thick mat causes trapped air that allows the acid from plants to build up. The acid from the plants slow down decay overall and rotting for just anything that falls into the bog. This causes the bottom of a bog to be composed of half decomposed plant debris. Sorry, that was very tongue twistery. Basically, the moss and the plants that grow at the surface form a thick mat that causes some kind of chemical biological reaction that basically blocks the airflow of the body of water, and that slows down decay and rotting for things in the bog. Slowing down rotting and decay means that the bog is going to be filled of partly composed plants. Like I was mentioning earlier, this prevented circulation of water because of the thick mat makes it hard for water to flow in and out easily, and this leads to low levels of oxygen within this bog. For this reason, not enough oxygen and not many fish live in bogs compared to marshes and swamps. Now that we've talked a little bit about marshes and bogs, given a base idea of what they are, what's the difference? Right now, to me, marshes, bogs, and swamps, they all sound pretty similar, except for this one major difference that bogs have. Although they're all wetlands, we already know that bogs are different from marshes and swamps because they're highly acidic, they have lower oxygen levels, rarely any fish live in bogs compared to marshes and swamps. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but bogs have organic matter, like poop, and partly decayed vegetation that accumulates at the bottom because of the thick mat that I was talking about, and it makes it hard to decay, so everything just basically is stuck in there. But yeah, that's basically the difference between a bog, a swamp, and a marsh. Swamps and marshes are more so similar with each other compared to a bog. Now that we've talked about what each one is and a little bit about their differences, I thought we could go into what occupies these wetlands. Wetlands are super, super diverse. So many animals live there. Birds, insects, amphibians, fish, small mammals, they all live there. Plants too. Many, many different plants grow there. It's very diverse. There are also a lot of nooks and crannies for animals to raise their young and live, as well as find food, of course. So I want to talk a little bit about the food chain, or like the food web in this habitat, because it just seems like there's a lot of going on. A lot of choices, who eats what. I thought I could delve deeper into that. So, there are 4 levels, usually, in a food web. There's the primary producers, which are the plants usually, and in this case, the wetlands. There are the reeds, the grasses, voles, which is another type of plant. And they're sustainable by themselves. They are able to be produced with sunlight, just independently. And then the second level is primary consumers, which are plant eaters. In this case, the wetlands, they're insects. A specific one in this habitat are the newts, spring peepers, and dragonflies. Dragonflies are super good at catching their prey mid-flight, and they're actually an omnivores, so they eat plants and they also eat meat. They often eat mosquitoes, which is super good for us. The primary consumers in the second level, they eat the primary producers, which is the level above that I was talking about. The plants. I really want to see a dragonfly catching their prey mid-flight. That would be so cool. I've never actually seen a dragonfly in person. Okay, moving on to the third level. The third level are usually carnivores. They are called the secondary consumers, and these consist of the small fish, the rats, the birds, the water birds, for the wetlands. A specific one that I saw being explained in the article that I was reading were the red-winged blackbirds. They are said to be very territorial, like they will attack anyone who tries to enter their territory, very, very protective of their food, homes, and babies, of course. The final fourth level of this food chain are the tertiary consumers. They are basically carnivores that eat other carnivores. They are sometimes referred to as the apex because they are one of the top eaters of all species in that habitat. In the wetland habitat, they are considered as big fishes, snakes, bobcats, or bearded owls. I had no idea that bobcats belonged in a wetland habitat before I researched about it, so that's something new I learned. You learn something new every day. Of course, I just named a few specific animals within each of the food chain levels. I just wanted you to know that the things I named were not everything within each level. There are so many more. There's the turtle, there's specific fish, there's other birds too. I just am not going to name it all because that's going to take way too long, and I'm sure you would not appreciate me sitting here explaining every single species within a wetland habitat and dividing them by their food chain levels. So I just named a few examples to kind of explain the gist, and I hope that was able to go through. By the way, I'm not a big fan of insects, and I have to be honest, although I do appreciate the very rich biodiversity in these wetland habitats and the good things that the insects do to it, I would not appreciate being near the insects that lurk around these wetlands. I would be so scared, and you would see me running away. I would not stay there for another second longer if I saw one of these insects flying about near me. I thought we could talk about how wetlands are formed, because before I researched, I thought they just appeared out of nowhere, but because they're so complicated, I thought it was hard for them to appear out of nowhere. So that led me to a little deep diving to answer my question and maybe yours. There are many ways that wetlands can be formed. I am just going to talk about 3 main ways. The first one, I thought I could start with something cute and attention grabbing a little bit. So one way that wetlands are formed are from the help of beavers and their damming rivers and streams. Although they don't last too long, just a few years. So beavers dam rivers first by diverting the stream of water to lessen the water flow, to not make it too hard for them to work. Then the beavers use branches and logs to drive into the mud of the stream bed, forming a base. This creates a small pond that often are used as wetland habitats. For the beaver, though, this pond is where they get protection from predators and build a beaver lodge to live and relax in. Oh my goodness, beavers are so cute. I love beavers. I hope it's not just me that I love beavers. They're one of the cutest things in the world. And they're also just so crucial to their habitats. They build their own homes, not even knowing they build another entire biome for so many more animals. How cool is that? A second way that wetlands are formed are natural forces. Some of the natural forces are earthquakes, waterfalls, and river floodplains. We'll take it one at a time. When earthquakes happen, they might cause the land to drop down near the shoreline or water table. Sometimes the earthquake dams a river, and both of these instances can lead to the creation of a wetland. Secondly, wetlands often form near, under, or around waterfalls because of the spray the waterfall makes. The waterfall spray helps with the lushness, the moist and soft soil and vegetation around. Oftentimes there is a small body of water that comes from the excess waterfall. And the last force of nature comes from a river floodplain. What is a river floodplain, you ask? That is a great question. A river floodplain usually happens after storms, flooding, or heavy snow melting. They develop through erosion that is processed, and the sediment gets deposited throughout the land when it floods, snows, or during a storm. A wetland is only formed when this occurs continually, and the flooding provides enough moisture. So it usually doesn't happen just when it floods once, where the flooding has to have been extreme and very long. But it needs consistent moisture and exposure to moisture in order for this wetland to form. As a wetland is, it has to be a body of water, a little bit, covering the land. So not only does it need this consistent moisture, it also needs active water. And finally, before I go off track, the third way that wetlands can be formed. Want to take a guess? Hey, it's humans. It's me and you. So, oftentimes these are caused by accidents from highways, irrigation projects that cause excess water drainage or impound water. Impound water is just gathered water, a body of water that is used in the immediate days or the future. Sometimes purposely, government agencies or conservation groups create wetlands to restore species and biodiversity. Many reasons. There are many reasons as to how us humans can form wetlands. We have reasons for everything, definitely. That was the main 3 ways that wetlands habitats can be formed. That was probably not 3 because I had a few sub ways inside my second one, which is forces of nature. But that was 3 main ways that wetlands are formed. Well, I might have gotten a little bit off topic. I might have gotten on multiple tangents throughout this, but just to recap for me and for all of you guys, I first talked about my Halloween, then I talked about the 2 spooky featured species, the Viperfish and the Barreleyes. For the second section, I introduced or defined what marshes, bogs, and swamps were, vaguely. Then I delved into some of the differences between them and some of the animals that live in the habitat, which I talked about the food chain within a wetland habitat. And finally, I talked about ways that these wetland habitats are formed. Well, it seems like I have come to an end today to what I want to say, and I want to thank you guys all for listening to this week's episode. I hope it was enjoyable. This week's episode was a little bit longer than the last few weeks, and I hope that was not too bad listening to me ramble. I hope I did not go too fast throughout. I will see when I edit this. Hi, it's future me, just me editing it. And what was I saying? I did not talk fast at all. Literally, all the pauses are driving me crazy. I do not understand how a person pauses that much in their sentences. But the pauses that you hear now are much less than what it was before. So, yeah. And I hope I made sense and I am alright to follow along with, because sometimes I don't do a very good job with talking in a very understandable read. But thank you all for listening. I hope you have a productive day, a restful night. Make sure to tune in to next week for another 25 29, 28, or 30 minutes of fun and excitement and rambling. Love you all, beautiful slay people. Get some rest. Talk later, alligator. Bye.